call to order. Looks like all 7 of us are here. And we have a full quorum. Looks like we have Joy from this attorney's office, Shannon here, and Deputy Chief Sullivan present, with hopefully Acting Chief Murad showing up in a little bit. Do we have any additions or modifications to the agenda?
Move to remove items 6 and 7.
Item 6 and 7. I was under the impression that item 6 was rolled into the chief's report. So I don't have a problem with that. And are you looking to table President Obama's final report on the 21st century policing till next meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right. Yeah, all in favor of sorry.
Need a second to the motion.
Okay, true. I guess I just wanted to clarify, seeing how wellness is rolled into the chief's report, do you want to just move item 7 then remove item 6 and then move item 7 till next meeting?
I accept that amendment. Yeah, I accept the amendment to the motion just to move that to the next meeting.
Do I have a second on that? Vice Chair Hart seconds it. I'll wait till Mr. Hughes returns back for the vote. All right, all in favor of moving agenda item 7 till next meeting, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Aye. That vote passes unanimously. And any other modifications or amendments to the agenda? I am not seeing any, so we shall move on to item 4, public forum. And is there anyone signed up to speak today?
I did not have anyone request to speak, no.
All right. If there's anybody out in the public in attendance that would like to say anything at this point in time, please raise your hand in the
Point of order. Did we vote to remove that from the agenda, or did we vote to approve the agenda?
We voted to move item 7 to next meeting.
Okay, so do we have an agenda?
Yes, we do have an agenda.
Okay.
I am not seeing any hands raised in the attendees right now, so we'll conclude public forum and move on to agenda item number 5, which is the chief's report. DC Sullivan, are you able to provide the chief's report?
I'm not really sure what John had planned for this. He did not relay to me what his speaking points were going to be as far as anything that is current or pressing at BPD. So I would defer as far as that goes. And I'm certainly able to answer any specific questions that anybody has.
All right, then in that case, I open up the floor to any questions for DC Murad. Sorry, for DC Sullivan, my apologies. Commissioner Durfee.
This might not be an appropriate question for the deputy chief, but it might be best to address the commission as well. It's a newbie question with regard to the email that we got before this meeting from Liam Murphy, Esquire. I don't know what to do with those emails. I don't know what we're supposed to be doing, what we're supposed to be responding. It's directed to the police. Everybody's copied on it, so everybody got the email. I don't know if that's something that could be discussed by the chief. I don't know if this is something that we should bring up here. Certainly was a lengthy email, and I would encourage this person to join in public forum. Is that how that person would come to engage in conversation with us? Do we ever discuss those emails?
I guess I'm not familiar with the specific email you're talking about. Was this sent today?
Yeah.
Okay, I was
About
in
an
training
hour
all
ago.
day off. I was in training all day off site, so I have not yet seen the email. I literally just got back to jump into this meeting. So
Was it addressed sorry, and I certainly didn't get the email either, so I just want to confirm that the email was only sent to the commissioners, or do you see that it was the chiefs were included on the email? Just to make sure he doesn't search.
Excuse me, AC Murad is copied, as is the mayor, all the commissioners, and some other folks. Shannon, you're the only person that's not, and I was just gonna send him your email address and say, if you want to talk about this, public forum is the way to.
yeah, I don't see that I received it in my email either.
Right.
I'll be happy to forward it along to you then.
Great.
I just did. I just sent it to you, Deputy Chief Sullivan. So in essence, this individual was complaining. Do you mind, Karen, if I just give a little background? I mean,
No.
it's common to what has happened with us as a commission before. It's, we're not really assigned to wards. And so the individual addresses all of the commissioners with a concern about some activity in the city near their home that they feel like is not being addressed. And so I think one of the things for us as a commission is, does this now become a complaint, right? A citizen complaint. I think they use the word in here, complaint. So to your question, I simply wrote directly to acknowledge the email and say that we were having a meeting today, and it would probably not be something we would have the opportunity to get into, but if it's a complaint, maybe it's something I don't know the answer. It's a really valid question. And I think we all handle these individually, right? When they come to us, which doesn't seem the most efficient way of handling them.
Right. And I didn't want to hit reply all and step out.
Right.
And so just, maybe, I don't think that we can address the complaint, especially if the chief hasn't had a chance
Right.
to go over it. So I would just put that, I don't really know what this is, but I thought to call another commissioner, but I had such terrible phone service about how to address these things. But if maybe someone could, I know that Mela and I are new. If there's a process for them, if it's we're just responding individually saying, reach out, or I just didn't know what to do with it. And I didn't want to respond just myself, I didn't.
Right.
Pretty significant complaint.
Yeah, I would have to, I'm just glossing over the beginning of it here, and without having fully read it, my guess is that it's some of the disorder that exists in that area near this residence that this individual is talking about, which has been an ongoing problem for a few years.
So maybe there can just be confirmation with us after this meeting, how it's going to be treated. And then one of us can respond to him if it's become a complaint per se, that will be addressed in that way.
Yeah, and generally with something like this, if it is what I think it is, we would assign it to the area lieutenant. And in this case, it's a border area of both downtown and C area. So perhaps both Lieutenant Lebrecq and Lieutenant Lawson would take a look at this and see what they could come up with as far as a specific plan to address the complaint.
And I just, since we're on the discussion, so one of the concerns, all right, so I think just in general that one way to respond is, yeah, I think that we as commissioners can follow up with the individual as individuals, but then we can also raise concerns that we have during the meeting as well, even without asking or waiting for someone to come in and present their concerns to the body. I think, so I gather one of the things that stood out to me in the complaint, in the letter, was that there were concerns that BPD was turning a blind eye to what you call disorder. In this case, the person is alleging open air drug dealing because of concerns that essentially nothing was going to be done, right? That if the state's attorney is not going to prosecute, then the response that this person's alleging the BPD gave to them was, we're not going to do anything about it because nothing would be done at a higher up level anyways. And then there were concerns, when the person asked for increased foot patrols, the response was, we don't have the manpower or the budget for that, so talk to your city councilor. So I think that's the broad areas of concern, I take it, that the letter was, that person was speaking to. So yeah, I guess the person would like a response to those particular kinds of concerns.
Yep, and that's not something that I would say is something that is any sort of direction that the agency as a whole is giving. We have always advised officers that regardless of what happens, for example, in the prosecutor's office, that the officers are to do their job at that time and address the issue as they encounter it. And then whatever happens in the next step happens in the next step, and that's beyond their control. So it's not something, I mean, this may be, I see the reference to an individual officer, and quite frankly, it may be some of the frustration that the officers are feeling. Morale is at an all-time low, quite frankly, at the current moment, and this may be an expression of that, as long as this is accurate, documenting that conversation that this individual had with that officer.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Hughes.
Have we closed out public comment session? Have we closed it out? And if we have, can we move the agenda and we can perhaps discuss process on the maybe the section where it's commissioner updates and comments?
I believe, yes, we did finish. Actually, technically, I believe not, because Commissioner Durfee we have not finished public forum.
You were on the chief's report.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Chris. My apologies. We did finish public forum around the chief's report, and this is a question for the chief because I opened up the floor for that. So
the only other, I'm sorry, Commissioner. I was going to just add the only other thing, I did get a response from AC Murad that the only other thing he was going to advise you of is that the Detective Bureau has done some fantastic work on the incidents involving discharge of firearms in the city. They are making a lot of progress. We are not getting a lot of cooperation with people of interest, but they are making a substantial amount of progress in that investigation.
Thank you for that. Sorry, back to Commissioner Hughes. What was in your question again?
I have no question. I think I was just confused.
Okay, my apologies then. All right. Well, I guess I would like to have a chief's update at some point. Is it possible to have AC Murad email us what that would be and maybe post that to board docs or to our webpage afterwards? Is that a possibility?
Yes, definitely. I can get that done.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 8, which is the social media policy that I believe all of us have had a chance to review and go over. So I open up the floor to any questions or comments in regards to this.
I just had one question, and this is really for Joy. Joy, are you on?
Yeah.
This policy applies across all departments? There are no other social media policies, correct?
That is my understanding, that this is for like citywide employee policy.
Okay, I have no other questions.
I guess I open up the floor to, are there any gaps that we are seeing in regards to this? Do we feel there's any place where we could strengthen social media policy in regards to the Burlington Police Department?
Yeah, I had a few questions.
Shoot, Landon.
All right. The first one was, maybe I missed it. Does it say that the employees have to identify themselves? Did I miss that? It doesn't say, it says if you're identifying to put these clauses in your description, but it doesn't say if you have to identify.
So I can say one thing that it says, but I don't know if this is exactly your answer, Landon, but at the top of page 2, and I'm sorry, I just started blurting.
Don't worry.
At the top of page 2, it states, when commenting on city business on personal social media accounts, employees may not intentionally mislead or misrepresent themselves to any member of the public with the intention to influence any official or member of the public regarding city business. So I'm not sure if that's as broad as you're looking for, but
Yeah.
that's what I saw that addresses that issue.
Okay. So yeah, I thought that was kind of vague. That sounds kind of vague to me then. Another one is the posting of photos wearing a uniform besides the events. That was in there. So like it says that you can use the social media obviously during downtime, but what if you're like posting, things with your uniform on? It only says that you can, I just want to clarify, you can only post during events, or I can find that in here. Let me find it. It is on page 3, the 3rd bullet point. Says employees may post personal photographs or provide similar means of recognition that may cause them to be identified as a city employee. Examples include promotion, recognition, appointments, events, and awards. So if you're posting outside of that with your uniform on, right? Is that okay? I'm just trying to understand. Because I know that's a common thing that people do, right? They post selfies in their uniform, or anybody like at any job, they post in what they're wearing. So just trying to understand.
So, I mean, if I may share, under my reading, and I, of course, stand to be corrected by the city attorney and representative of the city attorney's office, but my reading, nothing in that bullet point states what an employee may not do. It merely says what the employee may do. And so nothing in that bullet point or any of the others that I see would prevent an employee from posting something to a social media account which contains the uniform, so long as, if they're also speaking about something which might be mistaken as policy, that they disclose that they're not expressing an official position, et cetera. So I don't see anything in that bullet point which would prevent someone from posting something in their uniform. Am I missing something, Commissioner Nipper?
No, yeah, you're right. That's true. I was just wondering, because I don't see why it should be there at all, right? Then what's the need for it at all? If we're not forbidding them to post in their uniform at all, then what's the point of having it, right? Like, could I be wrong? Or it just seems kind of extra then, if that's the point.
Or isn't it saying that that employees can't post personal photographs that cause them to be identified as city employees?
Did it say that in there? That's what I was wondering, if it said that anywhere. Maybe I missed it.
Page 2, bullet point 3.
Page 2, bullet point 3. All right.
I guess it's actually page 3 technically, but
bullet point 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. It says they may post that cause them, examples include those, but could they post outside of that? I guess you're right. I don't know. Maybe the examples threw me off. So I guess they can. So all right, that answers that question.
Well, I gather, so the previous page, bullet point 3, says that if someone posts something which identifies them as a city employee, then they have to include a qualifying statement that says, again, using my own, et cetera. And the next page, bullet point 3, says that you may post photos that provide recognition, means of recognition that cause you benefit to the employee.
Right.
So I don't necessarily see a tension between those. I just see that essentially that if the content of the post might be taken to be representing a city position, then the employee must disclose that or disclaim that.
Right. So yeah,
but then
I guess. Sorry.
Yeah, but as you point, yeah. So this is kind of giving additional guidance. It's saying whether it's necessary or not, is providing additional guidance that this is an example of something which is permitted, which I gather these things sometimes do.
Right. So yeah, I guess that does cover that. Just had another one or two questions. Oh, the definition of social media. It says posting on like web forums and blogs, but it doesn't say anything about commenting on news articles. Because I know obviously news articles are posted online and you're allowed to comment on those, but maybe I missed it there. It doesn't say anything about the news articles, unless that is included under a definition of some like blog.
I would take that to be a forum. So a comment thread would be a forum in my interpretation. But
okay.
Again, I defer to to the legal authorities, but I take that to be a forum.
All right.
Yeah, and it's really a broad definition at the end where it says commenting or posting information or content of any sort on the internet, including.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so that's all I have. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I apologize. I thought that the word forum was mentioned, and it is not. So, so I take back that comment that I just made.
So apparently this policy, just to my first question, it in no way delineates or holds law enforcement to any other standard than that as a typical city employee. That's what I understand. And the last thing I'm seeing here is that this policy has already been approved by the city council, correct?
I believe so. I guess my question is, do we feel the need to draft up our own separate BPD specific social media policy, or something that further strengthens this document here?
I would just add, just in response to Commissioner Hughes really quickly, I would just add that in my understanding, the media policy which BPD has adopted also applies to social media. So the media policy, separate from this social media policy, does govern some sorts of information that can be released, information about investigations, et cetera. Because I take it that social media is a subset of media, but this provides additional guidance beyond just that. So besides the media policy and this, right, I got the question is there an additional police-specific social media policy that we'd recommend, that we'd want to adopt?
Commissioner Grant.
Just a couple of quick questions. Number one, are uniforms considered city property?
Yes, they are.
They are? Okay, thank you. And then so I remember the city council talking about this and presenting this. I can't remember, can we say definitively that they've actually voted on this and this is the current acting policy?
Yes, it was voted on. I think it was in April.
Okay. Okay, it just with all the COVID stuff happening, just lost track of things for a while. So I guess for a future meeting, if there is a police department media policy, I guess I would like to look at that to see how that compares to. Is it a supplement to? I like the idea of having a single city policy that applies to all departments and takes into consideration as to what could happen in all departments. The city right now doesn't have really a centralized social media policy. This is something that I've asked about. It's kind of different people for the different departments post things, but not in a kind of organized way, except for, I guess, the Department of Public Works, which does have a dedicated communications person. So I think that would be something to kind of look into as we look into and strive to improve overall communication between the police department and the community that it serves. So just those are just some things I wanted to mention.
I actually like that. I'd love to. So, are you asking? Should we then review the current police department social media policy at the next meeting?
Yes, I think we should.
All right, absolutely. Do I need? Sorry, Commissioner Hart.
Thank you, Chair. No, I was just going to say, I gather that one of the motivators behind adopting a separate social media policy for the police department, separate from, and in addition to the one which is approved and applies to all city employees, is that there are additional concerns about the police use of social media, in particular about concerns about whether or not the police, insofar as the members of the police department, might be especially coercive, or might be, that social media posts might be especially coercive, or might be otherwise impermissible in ways that other city employees are not. I gather that is the bulk of the concern, and I gather that concern applies both to department heads, the chief of police or acting chief of police or interim chief of police, and applies as well to employees. So I guess the question is whether people think that the current protections that are provided in the current social media policy prevents those sorts of abuses that might be specific to the police department rather than other departments.
No, I think that is the question at hand. And frankly, I do think this does cover a lot of some of the things that have transpired in the past, but I don't think it would hurt to take a look at what is existing right now and see if the current the separate department policy is, I guess, up to snuff, or at least covers all these things. Does that make sense?
To me.
For a minute, is there a separate email policy as well?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So based upon what we've seen from some of the challenges that we've had historically, as well as some even more recently, I'm not sure that, and I don't want to be pushed to really elaborate because I don't know right now. I have looked at this today, but I haven't looked at it with that, taking that into consideration. But that's the reason why I led with the question that I led with is sort of, is this the policy? Because my spidey sense tells me that there is a higher standard for law enforcement, and I would not venture to try to unpack this policy tonight within this session to really put a point on that. But I would ask that maybe we might return. Perhaps we could return to it. But I really think that when you have situations where folks have this type of power as law enforcement officers and or as chiefs and so forth, and interacting with civilians, we know that can be intimidating, and that can also be somewhat somewhat frustrating, to someone in the general public to wake up. I know I have waken up and has been from no one from this department, but from the state police, and gotten a text from somebody that I didn't care to get a text from, for example. So I think there's some things that we could probably unpack on this policy. Thank you.
Commissioner Hart.
Thank you. I'll just say really quickly, first, Department Directive 30 does lay out some of the restrictions on what sort of information can be released in general. So again, that would cover social media as well as other areas. So that includes things like information about personal information about suspects, confessions, statements, identities of people, things like that. So that certainly would be information as well, which is relevant, but that's not going to govern, all of the things. Just want to make sure that's, also there to be looked at. I gather that some of the concerns that people have expressed to me about social media usage in general have been things like, they don't think, for example, that any member of the police should proactively contact any member of the public or express any opinion about matters related to the city or the police department on social media, particularly, right? So that no members of the department, whether they are the chief or other members, should be contacting somebody on a social media site, DMs, for example, on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. So they've expressed the concern that no member of the department should express opinions about, city council positions or policies, for example, whether that is the chief or a member of the department. And so again, I gather that some of those are prevented by the current social media policy. Members of the department who are not the head of the department don't have the latitude of commenting on, on kind of the direction of the department in social media sites without disclaiming that they're their own views. But then the question becomes, do we think, for example, that members of the police should be prevented in general? There should be a blanket proscription in general for members of the police department from contacting anyone through a DM, for example, on Facebook or Twitter or another social media site. Again, so my position is that there does not need to be a blanket proscription on such activities, that much of that can be handled on essentially a case-by-case basis, that any general policy might be governed too broadly, because that would be essentially the same as saying that no chief of the department can contact any citizen of Burlington directly through any means. I mean, it seems to be equivalent to me to that. But it also seems like the sort of thing that should be taken, should be handled very carefully, understanding that there are the imbalances that we've talked about. So that's my view, but I gather that is the concern. So I'll make sure those concerns are available to be discussed by people if they want to discuss them.
And I think we absolutely should discuss this. I'm happy to, I guess, is it table this agenda item then for the following meeting to, I guess, take a deeper, I guess, so we can I guess take a deeper look into DD30, the current social media policy, the current human resources policy here, and get back to it. I think I saw Commissioner Durfee's hand up.
And I think Commissioner Grant had said she would like to look at the media policy.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think looking at all those things so we can have a comprehensive overview, because there's definitely a concern about intimidation. There's definitely a concern. There is actually some social media activity in the last week and a half where I think people sometimes have to be very careful about their positions, and if they trying to figure out what the term is, it's if people's politics become really transparent, they could be accused of being biased, even though that's not their intention. So it's a tough discussion when looking at interactions with the public, and definitely addressing issues of potential intimidation. So if there's a response that the department feels needs to be made to an individual, there does need to be a process in place in terms of how they contact that individual, because we've certainly heard complaints about, DMing somebody directly through their social media accounts without their permission. So is that in the media policy that the police department has? Because it's not really addressed in the city's social media policy. So
Yeah, I want to agree there, and just, you know, I think just reiterate the fact that, you know, and I think that this is really the central theme here is just that there's probably going to have to be another policy for policing as it pertains to social media. I think it's for us to look that out. And yeah, I agree about the, you know, keeping the politics out of it, and maybe there should be language in there that speaks to, you know, making sure that there is no political opinions being conveyed and so forth. I mean, I'm trying to hurry up and get off this call so I can get onto the RNC convention myself.
Is it possible to request from you, Shannon, DD30, the media policy for the department, and I guess any other retained documents that might overlap with social media use and communication use?
Absolutely. I will tomorrow look for those and get them sent out as a packet for y'all to have some time to review them longer.
Awesome. Thank you.
Commissioner
Yes.
Grant have another question.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Grant.
One other thing I wanted to comment on was just a concern that I had, and I'm not quite sure how it should be handled, but I feel it should be discussed. We know, based on some things that have happened with the big social media scandal that we had, for lack of a better term, that multiple people knew what was going on. We knew people knew that was going on. So I feel like there should be some duty to report that. And then someone shared I was out of town this week and I did not have time to really deep dive it, but there was a screenshot that was shared saying that someone, and some of you may know about it, some of you may have seen it. I just did not feel like I had due diligence to confirm if it was actually real or not, because it was a pretty major implication that someone knew about the fake account that former Deputy Chief Wright had, and it has some pretty significant implications. So I think we have to look at that as well. I mean, there is definitely people who knew what was going on. Maybe they didn't feel they were in a position to say something about it. That could be part of it too, but it definitely should be part of the conversation.
So, I mean, I'm not exactly sure what it is that you're speaking to, but I've seen, just for example, you know, the claim that interim chief Morrison followed one of Deputy Chief Wright's alias accounts, and that was kind of the inference that was drawn from that was that she knew what was going on. I mean, I think that inference is too quick. So if there's something else that's
that's what I'm right. That's what I'm talking about, and that was why I didn't really explicitly want to say, because the inference was very quick. So, and it wasn't a legitimate screenshot, because as we all know, there are things that get posted that aren't necessarily true, and given the severity of the implication, we want to, you know, be careful and have due diligence. But also, having said that, part of the conversation needs to be, you know, if people know about things like this, what would their obligation be? Be it coming as knowledge from within the police department, or how it's handled when it's an exterior complaint. Because, you know, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, you know, Mr. Winkleman's complaint, we still don't know what happened to it. No one's coming clean about that. He saw something, he said something, and it got buried, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll just respond just to the first part of that, which is, yeah, as I said, I think even assuming that which I do, assuming that the screenshot was accurate, I think it's certainly possible to, right, again, I'm not speaking at all to what somebody knew or did not know. I'm just saying, just speaking to that particular point, it is certainly possible to follow someone because they express positions that you think are reasonable positions to express, and then follow them without knowing more about who they are, about their identity in a department. So, right, so I would, like I said, I would certainly want additional information, which might suggest that someone had knowledge that they, as far as I know, that they did not have, beyond just the fact that someone follows someone else on social media, which, as I said, I think it's tenuous grounds for drawing those kinds of conclusions.
I think that if I'm hearing Commissioner Grant correctly, is I think the main point that I'm hearing is that there should be some kind of duty to report. Mm-hmm. That if somebody knows something, then they should be required to say something. I think we may have taken a left turn on the example, but I think that that's what I got from that, and I agree. However, I wonder if, because when you start getting these frameworks of policies and they begin to cascade, what you begin to understand is that if it's misconduct, you'll find that somewhere else we have in policy that officers are required to report if they see other officers, engaging in misconduct. Does this rise to the level of misconduct? I don't know what that means, but I want to just, grab an appreciation for Commissioner Grant's observation and just concur with the, state of affairs that, previous cases have been left, whereas we still don't have conclusions. And part of it could be because there has been no requirement to report.
Commissioner Hughes, if I may, you are correct. We do have a policy on reporting misconduct. And then it's tiered. You've got the lower tier of misconduct and then a higher tier of criminal behavior. And officers are mandated to report.
Commissioner Hart.
Can I ask on that point? So with the current social media citywide social media policy, would a violation of that policy be included under any member of the department's duty to report?
I would say it would, because any policy that is a policy violation that an officer becomes aware of, they should be reporting that violation up the chain. But again, as Commissioner Hughes pointed out, there is a little wiggle room as to what actually is misconduct, right? How is that defined? So, and I don't know that I have a clear answer to that.
So I think, thanks, Chief. I think that part of this is it really goes to, because I've dealt with frameworks of policies before, and when you start having to rely upon something that's said in this policy to enforce what's going on in this policy over here, then it gets kind of crazy fast. And I think that, whatever we're stating within our social media policy that pertains to, the law enforcement, for example, when we come to that point, I think it's, for that reason, I think it's going to probably be pretty important that we just go ahead and put that in the policy. Just go ahead and, have that language right there in the policy. So it's very clear that the policy has the teeth that it needs to have. I'd be curious to get some public input on this as well, quite frankly. I'd be curious to hear what the, from public comment, consistent with, just proper civilian oversight. I think we kind of owe it to the public to, enable them to chime in on their thoughts on this type of policy, particularly given our history.
Given that we have another meeting coming up to discuss this, I assume that would be happening at the next public forum.
Right. Any further questions or comments on the social media policy? Not seeing any. We shall move on to agenda number 9. Final review of the draft of the role of the commission in oversight. Sorry. So based on the last two meetings where we had to table this discussion, we were waiting on clarification on number 3 from the city attorney's office, and it looks like it has been fleshed out compared to the draft from mid-June. And I do have a couple questions for you, Joy. Yeah, for number 3, it says each commissioner shall have access to written records of all complaints upon request to the chief, subject to the Vermont Public Records Act. Does that mean we have to make a public records declaration in order to receive these? I guess I'm not quite understanding most of that paragraph in there.
No, the intent is not that you have to make a request. I think the intent is that you continue getting these as usual. I believe that reference is in there just because there is certain information that might legally be required to be redacted. And so if that does come up, that's why that reference is in there.
Okay. And I guess my other question, right after that says, subject to the Public Records Act and the Burlington Police Officers Association agreement. I'm guessing where in their agreement would it prevent us from accessing this information?
So I believe the section number, I don't have it in front of me, but I think the section number is 15G. There's a specific section of the contract that makes responses to questions in interviews during an investigation confidential. And so that is what that is referencing.
Okay. Any questions or comments in regards to this draft?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think so, Joy, that you're saying that our request for well, first of all, I want to understand. I'll come back to that. So first of all, with the Vermont Public Records Act and the Burlington Police Officers Association agreement, our request is. This is saying that our requests are subject to those, and I've never even seen this before. So I mean, it sounds like we're subjecting ourselves to something that we're not even familiar with. I mean, where is the section 15 whatever of Burlington Police Officers Association agreement? I appreciate all of. Go ahead.
Go ahead. That contract is posted on the HR website. I'm happy to send that around to everyone to review with that section pointed out, if that's helpful.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Distributed as well.
I just want to hold the floor for a minute. I think that, yeah, I'd like to see that. And then I'd like to better understand the conversation that we had about the fact that we could just go ahead and get fingerprinted and just be done with this whole business about, saying, and so I see a provision in here. What's delineating one from the other? So you say further information. What further information? Where's the line?
So I think maybe Deputy Chief Sullivan, you can speak to this as well. There's certain criminal justice information that is protected and confidential. And I believe that they require background checks and fingerprinting for people to access it. I will note that policy does regularly reference back to state law on public records. So Deputy Chief Sullivan, do you have any comment on that?
So there is this thing called CJIS information. So anybody who has access to any of the information contained in any of our computer systems, basically criminal justice information, it requires you to go through a certain training and certification so that you are able to have access to that information. And that goes also beyond just someone who may accidentally view the information. It's anybody that has access to our building, for example. So anybody who could possibly use a key card to enter our building would have to go through that training and be certified as far as having access to CJIS information. The separate issue as far as the contract goes is it's a collective bargaining contract between the city of Burlington and the Burlington Police Officers Association. And so that is a collective bargaining contract that the city negotiates on a periodic basis, going back to the 15G section that Attorney Hovstad was referencing.
Okay, so I'm very familiar with that contract, and I just wasn't aware of the fact that it was precluding the commissioners from getting information, especially when it pertained to a complaint. Yeah. So anyway, what this is saying is that we're subject to that, but further information may be available. This may be available to the commissioner. Something about reviewing the records upon the completion of a fingerprint supported by a background check. So you telling me that I'm not hearing what this further information is, and I'm not understanding. Why don't we just do the background check and you just give us everything we need?
I'll let Joy answer, then followed by.
I'm going to give the chair back to Floor in a minute. I just want to hear the answer to this. I had more, but I see that we have other commissioners who want to speak here.
Yep, I'll have Joy answer that, followed by Commissioner Harp, and I believe Shannon had her hand raised.
I think the difference just between when it says further information is that there could be some overlap in space between information that is considered like CJIS information that's in that system, and then records that might have information that's not a part of that could be released just like as a public record without having to deal with that extra level of security.
So that still leaves me, but I'm just going to come back with the rest of my questions. I'm still kind of murky on that, but I'll come back with the rest of my questions.
Commissioner Hart.
I'll let Shannon jump in the queue if that was a response.
I just was going to try to clarify perhaps just a little bit better. So I don't believe that the Section 3 still entitles everyone to speak as they have been about any complaints in executive session. I think that this section is referring to seeing the actual written paperwork around such complaints. And so if that is of the direction of a complaint takes you to request the written records, then if you have a fingerprint supported background check, then it can be released to you pending any of the violations, the confidentiality from Section 5G in the BPOA or the Vermont Public Records Act. So if there's something in that act that prevents a written, like a name, or if they're underage, then that part has to be redacted. But this is just referring to the actual written and investigative paperwork around that complaint. And if you are interested in that, then you would need the fingerprint check in order to actually receive the copies and view the copies. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but.
Commissioner Hart.
So that may have answered my question as well. But yeah, my question was about the scope of the confidentiality agreement. So presumably that only speaks to the further information which could not be released under the Vermont Public Records Act, which I assume is 1 VSA 315. Because that only speaks to that particular information and not the information we would otherwise be getting, through,
yes.
Without needing the additional steps to clear.
The CJIS policy says that if something can be released pursuant to public records law, then you don't need that additional step to receive it.
Right, but just to be clear, it was that the confidentiality agreement didn't govern anything beyond the additional CJIS material was the point I wanted to clarify.
Yes.
That confidentiality portion of, you're speaking of the BPOA contract, Commissioner?
Well, I'm speaking just of the way that it's described in. Yeah.
And it's very specific in that section of the contract. It only refers to the interview, a portion of the interview.
Okay, thank you.
So then how does this how does this reconcile with line 90 of the racial justice resolution, but that says that the citizen-led police commission be entrusted with access to all complaints about sworn officers and city council based on public safety committee with all such public complaints with the choice on which ones to follow up on, blah, blah, blah. So how does this square with that? This resolution seems to be saying that the commission should be entrusted with access to all complaints.
Well, I mean, sorry, go on.
This policy, I believe that this is just describing a procedure for receiving those complaints. Like, this doesn't prohibit this commission in any way from viewing those and having those discussions in executive session.
Okay.
I just want to say,
Commissioner Grant, sorry.
I don't want to that
Commissioner Grant, sorry. Commissioner Grant has the floor.
Thank you. Quick question. Do we see all of the complaints?
In executive session, we do. So, last meeting, at the end, when we had executive session last meeting, when we entered the executive session, that is when we receive all the complaints.
Okay, so no matter how minor or major.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just for a point of clarification, we hear all of the complaints. We do not see all of the complaints.
Correct.
Well, that's section 4, right, of the policy. So it says that the chief will report to the police commission on all complaints as follows, and then states the way in which each complaint will be reported to the commission.
And that kind of takes me back to the question before I just yielded the floor is this is saying that we'll be entrusted with access to all complaints. So anyway, I guess what I'm pushing at here is that it seems like we're fighting a one-hand boxing match based upon how we're being prescribed, how we're getting access to this information. I've never felt adequate in doing this. But at any rate, that.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Let me just finish, Randall. Commissioner Hart. I'm just assuming that we can just leave that if there's at least 4 other commissioners that are happy with it. I wanted to just ask briefly, and then I'll be done with this. There is language.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, you broke up.
I'm sorry. There's language here that says that over in 6 it says that just if you go to page 3, item 6, please. It says that if a majority of the police commission, I'm at line 3, disagrees with the chief's decision, the police commission chair shall report this to the mayor. Is this the language that we agreed upon? Did we say it was going to report it, or was it? Did we think? I was assuming this was more like an appeal. Is this? I mean, I don't understand the value of this being reported to the mayor in this context. Just informational.
I mean, an appeal would imply that the mayor has the authority to override the decision, and according to the current charter, the mayor does not have that authority.
Okay, I want to hear the lawyer tell me what's going on now. So is that what the commissioner just said? Is that the basis of this language?
I don't know for sure, but I believe that is correct. I will check right now about that and see if I can report back to you.
Because at the end of the day, if that's the case, because we had this conversation, I remember we had this conversation, and what we were talking about was what, if anything, the mayor could do about it, or something like that. But I was always under the impression, or maybe I was maybe I just did not understand what I was hearing. But I thought we came to the point was if the mayor is powerless, or if the mayor is not going to do anything here, if there's no, I don't understand why the mayor would not have the authority to counter what the chief is doing. But if that's charter or whatever the case is, if that is the case, then there's no reason to even report it to the mayor. That's the only point I'm making. I'm sure the mayor would know. So if you could check into that, Joy, that'd be awesome. I have nothing else. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at the charter now to get you a reference for that.
I guess, are we allowed to move on to the next agenda item and then come back to that once Joy finds that answer? Is that permissible?
I just
Sorry.
wanted to speak to that last point, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
This
Floor is yours.
might not be to Commissioner Hughes' satisfaction, but the way I'm reading 6 goes to the mayor's supervision of the chief, but perhaps I'm misapprehending this, but that the reason it would go to the mayor is more of a dissatisfaction for the commission of the chief's performance, and the mayor, of course, oversees the chief. So that's the way I was seeing it, Commissioner Hughes, was as part of the mayor's oversight of the chief.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Hart. Thank you. That's about the best we can do. That makes more sense than anything else that I've imagined. And just for the record, Shannon, I want to just be on the record as saying I would like to see some reconciliation with items 90 through 100 of the racial justice through economic and criminal justice resolution. I'd like to see some reconciliation with that language from line 90 through 100 with this particular police commission policy. Thank you.
So, Chair, may I ask a clarifying question there too?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah, so this question I wanted to ask about earlier. So you would suggest that there was by the way, Joey, I was looking at 24 VSA Chapter 3 for the powers of the mayor with respect to disciplining members of the department. So, Commissioner Hughes, with respect to the reconciling those two documents, which you mentioned to it, so I'm not sure quite what that reconciliation is that you're talking about. You had said earlier that I think you had expressed some concern that members of the commission might not receive all the information that the racial justice resolution suggested, but that seems like it's speaking to complaints. I gather that, so again, this is my understanding, but let me know if I'm wrong. I gather that the discussion in item 3 of the role of the police commission regarding complaints about the police is that we can see what the complaints are, but that any confidential information in the complaint, in the complete written record of the complaint, is subject to further steps that need to be taken in order to see that. So it sounds to me as though there's information about the complaints that can be showed to the commissioners, but that not all the information about complaints can be showed to commissioners. And so I'm not sure that I see a conflict between that and what you're talking about, but this is my clarifying question. It's just, could you tell me more about what the conflict is that you see between those two documents?
Yeah, and I read that for the record for the attorneys, but there's much more that goes into what you covered is one of 3 particular issues that are in those 10 lines that I just cited. And so I would like to get feedback on all 3 of those lines. The one that you're kicking around right now, we've already covered, and I'm not interested in having any more conversation about that one, but there's a couple of other issues that are in there. And just to use an example, one of them is that on 96, it says that the charter committee would review proposed review and propose amendments to the city charter that authorize the police commission to approve by simple majority any disciplinary decision, including a decision of non-discipline the police chief wishes to implement in the use of force case and so forth. So I'm just, specifically, I don't really know really what I'm asking here either, because this is a legal matter, but if I had to dig on that one, I would ask whether or not by virtue of this particular resolution, whether or not this does not delegate the authority to the commission automatically, and whether or not the charter change was really something that could be done, but we would not necessarily need to wait for it to happen in order to have the authority by virtue of the delegation of the city council. That's one of probably 3 questions I had in those 10 lines.
Okay, so I'd like more information about the other conflicts, and because so in that case, the reason why they need to ask for the charter change is precisely because we do not have the authority currently, right? So that's why you would need to send it to the charter change committee of city council in the first place.
I don't know that that's true or not. I heard you say it.
And I would just say it is my strong belief that that's true.
I'd love to hear the attorneys.
Can you say which resolution you're referencing?
Again, I was really just reading this into the record so you can further reference it, but this is the racial justice through economic and criminal justice resolution that was passed on the 29th of June, 2020. So again, I don't want to elongate this meeting with these concerns. What I wanted to do is I wanted to place them in the city attorney's office just for reference, just to be on record, because I mentioned this a month ago before we had this conversation, that this was a concern of mine, and conceded to waiting until such time as we had this conversation to bring them forward.
And so I think,
right.
If I'm understanding your question correctly, to address it, that this commission has the authority that's been designated by the city council, and a future plan to designate more authority, I don't think acts retroactively before that is actually finalized.
I don't have a question. What I do have is just, I would just like the city attorney's office to reconcile this document with what it is that we're looking at right now, and come back to us and explain it to us when you get the opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Back to the agenda.
Commissioner Grant has a hand.
Sorry, I missed that. Commissioner Grant.
Just a quick question. Isn't there an outstanding issue regarding the charter in terms of the power that the mayor has when it comes to interacting with the police department or the police chief? That came out as we were looking, as they were deep diving options regarding avoiding the social media scandal, fiasco, whatever you want to call it. But there was something that came out in the charter where the mayor didn't have certain powers that was assumed that the position would have. And isn't that being looked at? Is there any way we can verify that?
Just again, the relevant section of the city charter is 24 VSA chapter 3, section 190.
I can only speculate on that. I don't know what the answer to that is.
So it appears that we are not ready to vote on this document then, unless I have someone motion that they want to vote on this document.
Could I ask Chair Gamache, what are the things that we're waiting for right now? What are the things that are still outstanding with respect to this document?
Well, based on the last 2 meetings, we were waiting on clarification from the city attorney on item 3. And looks like there has been at least it's been clarified, at least how I understand it, that we do have full access to the information in executive session. That things might be redacted if we, and that only that things would be redacted if we receive these documents outside of executive session. So, I mean,
could I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, could I ask the commissioners then what information they're still waiting on in order to vote on this document?
Commissioner Duffy.
I'm not waiting on anything. I thought it was clear, but this predates me, so I'm just listening to the conversation right now. I've read the document, and just from my perspective, I didn't have anything. I'm interested to hear Commissioner Hughes talk about how it doesn't reconcile with the resolution, but my understanding is that there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of the resolution itself. And so that's why I didn't have the same concerns or questions. And again, I wasn't here for that. So I myself do not have, I wouldn't wait to vote.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I'm prepared to vote on the document now, but I am sensitive to concerns people have that they don't have enough information to vote on this yet. I would just like them to explain clearly what the information is that they're waiting for in order to make that vote.
I second that.
I mean, I wasn't making a motion, right? Not. Yeah.
I know. Sorry. Sorry. I echo your comment. Commissioner Durfee.
I guess I would just be, yeah, I've heard Commissioner Hughes, you know, and I would, is there anybody else that has concerns that are different from Commissioner Hughes on whether or not they would vote on the document? Anybody that hasn't talked or maybe has a different perspective? It's just you know, it's obviously good for me to hear since it predates me. So I just would like to, anybody else?
Not hearing anyone saying that they're waiting on information, I move that we vote to adopt this document.
I second that. All right, with a show of hands, adoption of the role of the Burlington Police Commission in reviewing complaints against the BPD. All in favor, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Those not in favor, raise your hand.
Vote no.
That's a no. Vote is not unanimous, so I must do a roll call vote. Commissioner Gamache votes in favor. Commissioner Herjak votes in favor. Commissioner Grant.
In favor.
In favor. Commissioner Durfee.
In favor.
Commissioner Hughes.
No.
Commissioner Harp.
Yes.
Commissioner Hart.
Yes.
That is 6 yeas, 1 nay. Commissioner Hughes is the lone dissenting vote.
No hard feelings, guys.
All right, that moves us on to item number 10, officer worn cameras and footage release policy. And this was tabled from last meeting. Guess questions or comments? Commissioner Harp.
Yeah, so I would just say, so I mean, I do think that that this body needs some way of generating a policy on officer cameras, on body-worn cameras. I mean, about how that footage can be released. I don't know that the most efficient way to generate such a policy is to try to do it through kind of discussion, you know, to kind of generate the document from scratch through discussions during police commission meetings, because that seems to me to be ineffective. So I would suggest either that a subcommittee of the police commission be formed to draft such a committee, or that we have some model policies that we look at from elsewhere around the country that seem to be effective, and then we bring those in for discussion as a template. Because I might just worry that right now trying to generate such a policy from scratch with the 7 of us would be ill-advised.
I second that.
I also think that's quite a very reasonable request and ask. I guess in regard, sorry, DC Sullivan.
Just like to comment that it is very labor intensive to redact video. The example I can give you is that roughly an hour-long video would take approximately 3 hours if you were very efficient to redact the video appropriately. So it's just something that, depending on the nature of the policy that you would draft, could require an extreme amount of work hours to redact videos appropriately to then be able to put them out publicly.
So
Commissioner Hart.
Motion for a
Followed by,
second.
Commissioner Hart, followed by Commissioner Durfee, followed by Commissioner Hughes.
So it was my understanding, hi Chief, welcome. It was my understanding that that there are increasingly efficient technological options available to the department that cuts down some of the labor. Is that correct? And so it's the number that you cited, the best technology the department has access to right now?
It is. I feel like we use the best technology as far as the camera systems go. We do have a certain number of licenses, but it's just very labor intensive. For example, going back to the hour-long video, someone redacting that video would have to watch the full length of the video, which would take an hour, and then they would have to go through and they would have to make video redactions as they went through the video, and then they would have to go back through the video a third time and make audio redactions as they went through the video. So that's why it's so labor intensive, but the technology is very advanced. It's Axon platform. Axon is the name of the company, and I believe it's almost a single source as far as video platforms go for law enforcement in the country right now.
The redaction software is also Axon?
It is. It is. It's based on their software. It stores essentially the data in the cloud. It's one of the only companies that I'm aware of that the DOJ certifies as a secure source for storing data like that in the cloud.
Thank you. Commissioner Durfee, followed by Commissioner Hughes.
I yield the floor.
Oh, I thought you had your hand raised before, afterwards.
I did, and actually Commissioner Harp spoke to what I was going to say, so I'm going to yield the floor.
All right, Commissioner Hughes.
I thought there was a motion for a subcommittee in a second. I was just wondering if I missed something.
Oh, not yet.
I expressed my wishes very vaguely in terms of like either subcommittee or looking at a model policy, something like that.
Well, I must have got confused when Commissioner Herjog said he seconded it. My bad.
Commissioner Nipper. Let's see you, Lenny.
Oh, hello.
Sorry. Yep, we hear you.
Sorry, something must have cut out. Yeah. So can Deputy Chief repeat that about the process again? Because you say you watch it through once and then you make note of redactions and you go through again. You do one type of redaction and then you go through again and do another type of redaction. Is that correct? Did I hear that right?
Correct. That's my understanding, is that you would watch the video in its entirety and then you would go back through and make video redactions on the first pass and then go back through a third time and make audio redactions on the third pass.
Okay. Speaking to what sorry, I forgot who said it earlier, but somebody was talking about technological advances. I was under the understanding that there is a AI format that could cut some of that down by like a name or a face. It can recognize that and cut it out automatically, and that would reduce it. Also, it sounds like the process just sounds kind of like you're going through 3 times why couldn't audio and video redactions be made at the same time? Would there be some reason for that?
So my understanding is there are some agencies that do similar things, but what they do is they simply redact the whole video to some extent so that the whole video is blurred and there is no audio at all. And so you can see body motions and that sort of thing in the blurred video, but you really don't have any detail. So there are some agencies, it's my understanding, that do that and then put those videos out publicly. But the only other thing I would add is we have 2 people in the whole agency that are really skilled at doing this right now. So again, we lack the manpower or capacity to really do it at a great volume.
And if I may, Commissioner Nipper, I don't know exactly why they have to do both separately, but if they could, they would be doing it because they don't like this. This is not something,
Yeah.
One of the persons is our ID tech, and she's got plenty to do with regard to evidentiary issues, processing evidence, marking it, recording it, keeping track of it. She doesn't want to be doing this. If there were a quicker way, I feel reasonably confident that she would be finding it. Axon itself offers a suite of editing tools that they say are better than what we currently have. It comes at a great cost. Everything that Axon does comes at a significant cost. And we're working through a new contract with them right now. But some of those bells and whistles, those are the things that they upsell you on, and we have not yet seen ability to do that. Frankly, if we did have to release everything, we would probably do what Deputy Chief Sullivan has mentioned, which is default to a system that really just makes relatively wide kinds of edits. And I don't know that that's going to have a lot of value insofar as you lose, if everything is blurred, you lose some of the nuance in certain kinds of incidents.
Yeah, I was just wondering because it did, obviously sound a little bit inefficient, but if I was just wondering if we could get more maybe clarification on that, because if it's a software error, then maybe we should look at solutions to that. Thanks.
Sorry, Commissioner Grant.
Is this company Axon, are they the only ones that provide this type of software?
So they are essentially a single source platform. We have had body cameras, I want to say, for probably at least 10 years. We had a pilot program. Initially, we were, I believe, the first agency in the state of Vermont to have all of our officers wearing body-worn cameras. And there were other companies that were in competition with them, but they just do not offer the level of programming and storage behind the actual product itself. So we would have to have a substantial investment if we were to try to deviate from the Axon platform and go with another company, for example, which I don't even know how many exist currently, because it seems like they've been consolidated. And Axon, again, spends a lot of money on the research and design to make their platform work flawlessly. And the other thing that I might add, just so you have some ideas to dollar figures, Chief Murad mentioned that we are negotiating a contract, and there is legislation that's going to mandate body-worn cameras for all law enforcement agencies in the state. And we feel it's a extremely valuable tool for many reasons. But just so you have some idea, that contract that we're looking at for 5 years is around $500,000 to replace the body cameras, to make sure that the docs work, and again, to make sure that data is preserved appropriately once it's created on each officer.
Could we get something in writing with regards to like the base costs and then the quote unquote bells and whistles?
So I would have to look into that more, because what I know from, and I'm more of a TASER guy than necessarily an Axon guy, but just from the process of negotiating a new contract, essentially my understanding is it comes down to licenses. So we have so many licenses that are categorized as a professional license and so many that are categorized as a end user license, and those professional licenses allow users to do more of the editing and go in and do that sort of redaction. So that's my understanding of how it works. Now, those are obviously more costly than an end user license. Now, off the top of my head, I want to say maybe it may be in the area of around $500 a license per year.
They don't really allow you to pick and choose features. They bundle them. And we attempted to get them to give us an a la carte menu, and they did create one, but the math in it is decidedly geared towards making you buy bundles, and the bundles are coming, it's not like, it's kind of like a cable bill. I mean, you may hate A&E, but you really want TBS, and the only way to get it is to get A&E too. And so they, as opposed to being able to just say, I want these 7 stations and that's it. And they work in that manner. Where there are other, and frankly, they are dominating the camera market because they really do have as a combination of business positioning and an honestly better product and better system, but they charge for it.
Commissioner Hart. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, I'd be curious to see the bundle pricing. I think that's good information to have, because when we talk about making sure the community is educated about things in the budget and understands what's in the budget, I mean, this would be a perfect example of what should, get out there.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Hart.
Yeah, I think so. Is the current contract with Axon, was that filed with City Hall, and is that something that can be distributed to commission members? My understanding is that all the contracts essentially that the department enters into are filed and available to be viewed.
I'll go into our database and see if I can pull it and send it to all of you.
Thank you.
And if I don't have it, Deputy Chief Sullivan will send you an email.
Thank you.
All right. I think a subcommittee to kind of tackle this issue would probably the best course of action for this. Is, I assume, based on open meeting laws, it can't be more than 3 people. Since there's 7 of us here, do I have any volunteers that would like to tackle this? I have one hand and Commissioner Durfee. Anybody else? I have Milo and Commissioner Harp.
Say though, I mean, in saying I'm happy to defer to anyone else who wants to do it. So if anyone wants it more than me, which is almost probably anyone, please feel free to step in.
You have a sweet pen, my friend. So, all right. So, also, do we need to? I'm sorry, Joy. Do we need to vote on this, or can we just kind of talk amongst that and that's it?
You need a motion to create the subcommittee and then a vote on that.
Okay. So I propose a motion to create a subcommittee to look up and draft an officer warrant camera footage policy. Do I have a second?
Second.
I saw Commissioner Hart's hand go up first. Sorry. Seconded by her. All in favor? Please raise your hand to say aye.
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 Looks unanimous. So that passes. And 3 volunteers were Commissioner Durfee, Commissioner Harp, and Commissioner Grant. Thank you guys very, very much for stepping up. And if we don't have any further discussion or comments on this agenda item, I believe we move to agenda item number 11, commendations. And for that, to Shannon, sorry.
So I do have a few commendations that we received over the past month from the last meeting. There was one that was passed on from a probation and parole officer regarding one of our new officers, Caldieri's interaction with someone and how he treated them very respectfully. And one of our other agents that was presiding over it and responsible for it said that they, were normally the victim kind of backs out of the process, and with our officers' advice and being there to be able to talk through it with them, they actually pursued and went forward, which they acknowledged was a great accomplishment of our new officer. We had a few members, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 2 of our dispatchers received commendations for their appreciation and professionalism and performance of a shift that was extremely busy one of the nights, and the help of a missing child with Down syndrome and several acts of violence and DUIs that night. And so they received commendation for that. And we had a citizen send in saying that there were several people involved in a physical and verbal altercation, and that the police officer response was very effective, that they arrived quickly and resolved the incident in a very professional manner. And that citizen sent in through the website that commendation. And that's all of those.
Awesome, thank you. Next agenda item is commissioner updates and or comments. So this is the floor for any commissioners to provide updates, comments, whatever's on your mind. Commissioner Grant.
So during the meeting, I had an opportunity to look at the letter that was earlier referenced from Mr. Murphy about the issues around his property. I definitely want to read it more in detail. I was working right up until the meeting. There's some pretty serious allegations, to say the least, within the letter. The letter is, we should definitely all read it. It is very, very detailed. Many examples of specific activity. This is definitely an area of town that I know personally I have seen, and I hear more and more people talking about. And the one thing he mentions, it appears to us that officers have this clearly passive aggressive attitude of, quote, maybe we will let this whole mess get so out of control, we'll force the city to restore our budget. That is very concerning. And I think we, I don't know whether we can automatically just say, let's put this through the complaint process, or do we need to reach out to Mr. Murphy and ask him if he's willing to do that, to make this a formal complaint so that it can be deep dived.
Commissioner Hart.
My understanding is that.
No, I said Hart followed by Hart.
Gotcha.
Sorry.
Gotcha. My understanding is that any of us could also file a complaint essentially on his behalf without waiting for confirmation. So if there's something that you could file a complaint directly.
Okay.
He did respond to my email that I just acknowledged his email, and he wrote back that he'd be glad to appear at the next meeting in public comment, but he was hoping a discussion would begin earlier. So I'm happy to invite him to public comment and or to confirm that we're going to elevate it to a complaint with his. So if you all want me to do that, I'm happy to do that.
That would be great. I could, so to elevate it as a complaint, should I submit his letter through the online process? Is that how we would?
Why don't I'll be happy to ask him, to encourage him to come, but ask him if we can submit this as a complaint on his behalf.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Chief Murad.
I was going to say that I had believed that it was more of a request for a process than necessarily a complaint. But it may be neither here nor there insofar as that goes. We're going to look into it irrespective. And I have spoken with some of the officers who, whom he references. We looked into these conditions before. They are street level. They appear to be street level. Some of it appears to be street level narcotics. That is not something that we generally address in these ways. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There are also issues with both of his neighboring property owners. We have struggled for a while to get the churches to be willing to file complaints and to take action against the people who use their properties in the way he's describing.
Commissioner Hart.
Yeah, so I would say, and partly in response to that, partly going off of that, I think one of the advantages or one of the reasons to file a complaint on someone's behalf is if we think that there's information that we would not otherwise be able to get, right? So if we want access to body-worn camera footage of something, or if we think something's not being looked into properly. So I wonder if there's more, Chief Mira, that you can say just about kind of what the general. So, since you were CC'd on the letter, you've got a chance to look at it, what the general response is to concerns that the public might have just about kind of how activities he's concerned about are being treated, and about whether there's a kind of a response on the part of officers that seems to suggest that they're deliberately deprioritizing certain types of enforcement because of broader political concerns, et cetera.
I don't think that's fair. I think that they are responding. They come, they do. In fact, they come when called. They have responded to a number of incidents at that location. One of the aggravated assaults that we dealt with in the past since the last meeting stemmed from activity that began there. He mentions others that have occurred earlier. We are aware it is a source of it's a place where people patrol. Our D area officers do go by there. So I don't believe that's a fair assessment to say that officers are neglecting their duty there owing to either the what is perceived as the political environment in the city, or what is perceived as the thresholds under which the state's attorney acts. However, there are thresholds under which the state's attorney acts, and that does ultimately impact whether certain kinds of activities are prioritized or not in the sense of enforcement. So, for example, if we know that certain kinds of, say, retail theft or certain kinds of, there is a move afoot to say that, and this stems, by the way, from pressures on the state's attorney's office insofar as the way the courts have decided to address the COVID-19 situation. And they only just announced that they are going to extend their method of dealing with the COVID-19 situation into the new year. They only accept 5 to 15 cases from the state's attorney at any given time. And that means that's the whole county. So the idea of what gets put forward has drastically been reduced. And in the meantime, there's simply not enough volume to have alternative methods, not enough capacity to have alternative methods take on all of these other cases. And so there are certain kinds of things that end up being a matter of, is this something that is going to be addressed in a sense past the enforcement that the officer takes? Now, I do not believe that officers are routinely choosing not to take enforcement simply because they don't believe that the next step is going to be followed. They are going to address conditions that are in front of them, no matter what. I mean, just before this rally, a car was speeding on Main Street, made a turn, and Officer Orfant and I issued enforcement to that individual for driving with a license suspension. DLSs are not going through to the courts. We know that. And yet, when DLS was in front of us, the ticket was issued. So I don't see that amongst officers, but I do acknowledge that it is a reality. There are the officers take the steps that they can, and then it stops. And to the extent that officers have explained that to him, and that sounds improper, I don't know what I can tell officers insofar as saying, don't say these things that you know to be true in your experience. I think what we need to do is have I would like a meeting where we sit together and say, here are the things that we can do. And one of the processes that leads towards this is the parallel justice process. And it's really great. The next meeting of the parallel justice entity is going to be dedicated to the orphanage and people who have come forward about that. But it is a really great mechanism for addressing problems that we've had. For example, a street here in the Old North End, residential street, that had a single unit on that street that was a great source of disorder, of drug activity, of real problems. Police did what they could do. Police went above and beyond, working with the courts and with the sheriff's office to obtain an eviction from the very judge who had put a moratorium on evictions owing to COVID. But that process takes a while. And certainly neighbors were upset at the length of that process. But the work was being done. I believe the same is true here insofar as we can. But having a table where we get together and discuss that, I think is the best way to move forward on it, and have all of the stakeholders involved actually start to say, these are the things that we can do, because it can't just be enforcement at the street level. It's true. If you arrest somebody for a street level marijuana deal, their end result will be 0.
Thank you.
So that, I think, is a good idea. Something that I had talked about before was what communication we can be having with the community, saying to the community, these are the things A, B, C that you could do that could potentially help a situation. So I think that would be a great thing to do with that particular neighborhood, because it certainly impacts people who live in that neighborhood, and it'll certainly potentially impact students that have returned in that neighborhood as well. That neighborhood's only going to get busier with people walking around that area. So I would definitely like to see a plan to kind of address what's in this letter, because certainly he's written it because he lives there, but it is an eyesore. So what can be done to support officers in that area, and what can the community do?
Sorry, Commissioner Durfee, followed by Chief Sullivan.
I guess reading the letter, and I know we had said we would do different, but it sounds like we're addressing it. I guess the concern that I had was the length of time that this person says it took for officers to respond to them. There was some nod to having to wait, and having been in customer service forever, sometimes people say that, but and then having been a person that has called the police, I'm not sure that, stating, the obvious, or saying, I didn't get from, and I don't know Mr. Murphy personally, but I know of him and have spoken with him. And it just seemed like, before you got here, Chief Murad, I brought it up at the beginning of the meeting, and I guess my issue is, just saying, morale was brought up, maybe it's morale, maybe people aren't feeling good, and they need to say, oh, this isn't happening because, you feel sort of bogged down. I guess I really just want to hear, something about that, because, if I call the police, even if there isn't anything they can really do, I still want to hear that you hear me, and that, I'm a citizen and you care and you're concerned. And I don't necessarily want you to download on what can and can't be done it sounded like there was just a long gap there, and that he's complaining. The complaint is really about not being heard. And that's that's where I get concerned is, we're all here trying to, no matter what our opinions can be, we're all trying to support the police department. That's what we're doing. So I don't, would not like it if people were out there saying, well, it is what it is, this person is upset, so some of the language in it was a little concerning, because I have not had that experience with the police department, but I would not want it. Just an opinion.
I believe DC Sullivan had his hand up.
I just wanted to add that this has it, and again, this is I have not had the opportunity yet to read this letter thoroughly, but I sympathize with the complaint because it's something that we have been frustrated with for a very long time. There is a group of people that are not receptive to services who are allowed to loiter in that area. And quite frankly, the property owners are enabling them. And it has been a source of frustration that we've met with property owners many times over many years. And they're just, and I understand where they're coming from. They're not willing to take that step to say we're willing to trespass these people, where then that enables us to take legal action and actually effect an arrest for trespassing if need be. So there's a lot at play with this. And I just, Chief Murad alluded to this, to the bigger system issues, but our officers will respond. And I'd be curious to look at those response times to see if there was an extended delay with one of the responses, which I hope would not be the case. But they will respond every single time and deal with that issue. But again, they're looking through it, through every issue they're addressing. They're looking through a lens of, can I take some sort of enforcement action to address this issue? And then if not, they just simply can't do it. But they will still respond, and they should be meeting with the complainant and engaging in a discussion. But again, that's not necessarily a satisfactory answer for that complainant, right? They want to see some sort of action to address their problem.
Commissioner Hart, followed by
I'll just
Commissioner
say,
Hughes.
not to get into detail, but it seemed to me just from reading the letter that what the letter writer was asking for was not necessarily that the people there be trespassed, but that something be done about what he took to be explicit illegal activity on the streets and the corners. So that didn't seem like asking for the people who stay there to be trespassed, but that something be done about people selling drugs from cars, things like that.
Commissioner Hughes.
So I don't know that. I mean, I haven't had a chance to read it at all. I saw it, and it looks like it came in within an hour before this meeting started, or less than an hour before this meeting started. I don't know that this is how we usually deal with complaints. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I just think that certainly it sounds like there's something. I'm hearing something concerning. Definitely want to, make sure we do something right. But I don't know if this is the way that we handle complaints. Not to say I'm not willing to, handle, change the way we do things, but something doesn't feel right about the way we're going about this.
I'll say to that, once you do read the letter, though, I think you'll feel okay with us talking about this as we are right now, because the person just wants it to be brought up in any sort of capacity, and hopefully get dealt with. I did notice one thing on for commissioner updates and comments. Sorry, I see Shannon smiling, so I'll let you take this away for how we do. Sorry, I'll just let you take it away.
So we are going to move to board docs, if everyone's okay with that. It is super user friendly, and it's awesome with the minutes and attaching the video and the transcription and motions and everything. It's super simple and easy. There is kind of a back end to it, but Amy in the clerk's office has let me know that you can see everything, all of the attachments, the meeting minutes that are attached to the agenda, and everything just from the public view. And if there is the need to have some further training. The lady at Board Docs that kind of gave me the ins and the outs, she's awesome and has volunteered and to give anyone that's interested a training, and I can send out just a reference sheet about how to access certain things in Board Docs. It's super easy and user friendly, and so I would ask that be considered for us to move in that direction. I see your hand, Randall, and so yeah.
I was just wondering, will we be notified when materials or documents are posted, when they're available?
Yes, so I don't, the way that it is, I don't foresee that I would not still send the agenda or the minutes as just to make sure that you have them, but everything is, I can send just a quick, like, everything is available or the minutes have been posted or here's the minutes. It's much easier to put it in one spot, and then it prints a perfect PDF and the video is there and the voting is already there, and I can do it as we're in the meeting. And so however you still want to be notified, it does ping like the meeting has been posted, and it does give you all of these notifications. If you want to, you know, if it's too many, then, you know, we can change those settings, but yes, does all of that. And I can still continue to just send them, you know, send it. It's much easier system than posting it up on the website and turning it into a PDF and you get in a Word doc, and then, yeah.
Automatic notifications are great, so that's fine. Thank you.
I guess this is a question for Joy. Do we need to vote on this, or do we need to vote on changing how we post this kind of stuff, moving to Board Docs, or can we just go ahead with this?
That's not something that you need to vote on. I think Board Docs, I think, is what almost every other committee and commission of the city is using right now. So
we literally like the only ones not.
Right. Let's get to the 21st century then. Thank you.
Yay, thank you.
Awesome. Any other commission updates or comments? Not seeing any. Moving on to agenda item.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Just really quick question. So I'm not asking for a long discussion about this, but obviously there's concern in the community with the return of a lot of members of the UVM community and people who are not usually here for the summer. And there's also been concern about whether or not BPD will be conducting increased patrol/enforcement of gathering restrictions, and if so, how those enforcement actions are going to happen. If you could just give a very quick discussion about how you're planning on handling those either requests for service or those concerns that neighbors have.
So we have been doing enforcement. We broke up a large party this past weekend and issued CER1 tickets. CER1 stands for COVID Emergency Response 1. It is a municipal ordinance that was passed earlier this year that allows the city to levy, it's a civil ticket. It allows the city to levy fines for any violation of the governor's order and its addenda. And so that is then further, not complicated, but it's further affected by the fact that the governor gave authority to municipalities to write new rules that are reflective of those municipalities' unique needs. And so Burlington, with a much denser population and a different kind of nightlife than many others, has passed additional laws through the city council proposed by the mayor and in action until mid-September to say that our gathering sizes are different than the rest of the state and our bar closing is different than the rest of the state. We enforced owing to the size of that party and the fact that it was against the CER regulations. We also, I believe, issued noise violations, but I'm not entirely certain about that. Any event that's big enough to violate COVID is also probably causing a noise condition according to the city municipal ordinances. But the advantage of a COVID ticket right now is that the university states that it will follow up on those in disciplinary ways against students that are ultimately more effective even than the fines levied for, say, a noise violation, which frankly if a large party has a noise violation, the host eventually goes around everybody who was there and says, hey, help me out, kick in $5, and they all kick in $1 or $5, and the violation fine becomes a lot smaller. But COVID carries with it the potential for university discipline. So we are doing patrols. We are looking at these conditions as we always have, and are paying attention to them, not only from the sake of quality of life concerns like noise, but frankly of life safety concerns that are public safety and public health oriented around COVID.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 13, meeting approval minutes from July 20th, 2020. Any typos or mistakes anyone noticed on them? I'm not seeing any. Sorry, vote on approving the agenda minutes from last meeting. Do I get a second? Commissioner Durfee seconds. All in favor of the minutes from last agenda, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Looks unanimous. And moving on to item 14, next meeting's agenda items. I think right now it's the tabled discussion for number 8, which was President Obama's final report on 21st century policing. Do I have anything else that wants to be put on the agenda at this time? I'll also obviously take agenda items throughout the next 3 weeks if anyone wants to add anything else to it. But I'm sorry, Commissioner Durfee.
Can we talk about, I don't know if this is, for the meeting, but I'd like to talk a little bit more about what Commissioner Hughes said in terms of handling complaints. That might be a little bit better for maybe me and Commissioner Grant to understand. I don't think either one of us had a good understanding of what to do when someone complains directly to you, or when you get, because I think people know us in the community. So I would like a little, maybe a sort of how-to or tutorial on how we're dealing with that. And it sounded like there wasn't complete and total agreement on that. So I think we should probably talk about that next time.
Yep, here for it. Do I hear anything else? Oh, sorry, Shannon.
Can I just ask a clarifying question, Commissioner?
Absolutely.
You had originally had wellness as a standing. It was voted for a standing item, but tonight I just heard you say something about bundled into the chief's report. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on when I'm drafting the agenda. Is it a standing item for wellness, or maybe I missed?
There was
Just want to make sure, because I just had it starred as for next time.
Thanks, Shannon. There was a suggestion back a meeting ago, whereas that seemed as though it would be appropriate.
Okay.
Just be included in the chief's report.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So were we going to add social media to next month's agenda? Did that carry over?
Oh, yes.
And then the oversight policy is carrying. No, we approved it.
No,
I'm
we voted
sorry.
on that.
Sorry. Yeah.
Awesome. So we have those two. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Grant.
Could we start to talk about ideas about community engagement?
Absolutely. Awesome. And if anything else comes to anyone within the next 3 weeks, feel free to forward it along to me and I'll pass it along to Shannon, or just cut me out and give it right to Shannon. I move to enter executive session to discuss personnel matters and updates on personnel matters. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor of moving into executive session to discuss personnel matters and updates on personnel matters, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Looks unanimous. And we plan on adjourning the meeting the moment it's done. So there will be the public part of the meeting is done, and I guess we'll move to the executive session and take a 5-minute break. Bathroom, grab water, anything like that. Sorry.
Sorry, who
Well,
was
those
the
links
second on
been-
the, sorry, who was the second on the part? Okay.
I seconded.
Okay.
Have those links been sent out already?
I did send them maybe 10 or 15 minutes ago. You should have received it.
Thank you.
Awesome. It is 8:05 right now. Reconvene at 8:10 to enter executive session.
Thank you.
Thank you.